You
It's
going,
like,
mate?
hey, no worries, mate. Hey, gone. The first player walks in was Nicholas Puran. Like, one player that I would like to point out here is Kyle Mayers. No, it's not the jump. It's the work that you're not doing at a foundation level that's causing that. Being in a gym, it's my comfort zone. I live there.
And just like that, we're back to Decoding Wisdom in the studio. As you can tell with the jerseys behind me, it's IPL season. So I thought, why not do a podcast about the IPL? And none better way to get someone who's been in the trenches at the IPL for a whole season, behind the scenes, and maybe that he can spill some tea for us as well. Now, for those of you who don't know what the IPL is, it's the Indian Premier League. It's a cricket franchise tournament that has taken the world by storm, launched 17 years ago, and it's worth $16 billion already. When you compare it to the NBA and the NFL, the NBA has been around for roughly 78 years, and it's worth between 90 to $100 billion. And the NFL's been around for 105 years, and it's worth $160 billion. So when you do the ratio, quick math, the IPL's taking the world by storm. So with that, let me introduce you to today's guest. His name's Amit Vengurlekar. Amit, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me here, Sachin.
Awesome. So, what was your role in the IPL?
Yeah, I was with the IPL franchise Lucknow Super Giant in the 2024 season. My role was strength and conditioning coach. I started through in March last year. I got the opportunity through one of my mentor, who is the head strength and conditioning coach for the franchise. Me and him worked together at the Western Australian Cricket Association for 5 years. And then I moved back to India. I was with badminton for a while, for a couple of years. And then at the end of my tenure, I had a conversation with him to see if there's any opportunity with the franchise in terms of strength and conditioning. Luckily, I got the opportunity out there. So that's how it all started for me.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I love the IPL. I've been watching the IPL since I was a kid. So we'll definitely get back into your story of how you got to the IPL. But I think I want to start with the IPL, get straight into it.
Yes. Yeah.
Talk about a lot of, team cultures, your experience, essentially just lifting the lid on cricket's biggest stage. So you get this contract, you get this opportunity from Western Australia, you go to the IPL. What are you thinking on the flight there in terms of, did you have some preconceptions of what it would be?
Well, I'll tell you a bit of a story of how it all happened for me. So I only got there, we were one game already in, and so things got delayed for me to confirm my contract and to have me on board. So we already one game in. I got a call from a manager a night before, and he said, "Look, we're confirming your contract as of today. When can you get here?" And I had already finished my tenure with the Badminton National Center, so I said I can get there tomorrow. And then he said, "Okay, let's book the flight." We got the early morning flight for Lucknow. So I was in Hyderabad then. And I couldn't sleep the whole night because it's like, oh, it's a dream come true. You're going for IPL. So I was like, cool. Got my bag packed up, everything done. And next morning at 4 o'clock, I was at the airport. My flight was around 6:30. Got there, and in my mind, I'm just thinking, oh, how are things going to unfold? You're going to meet all the star players, all these big coaches, all star coaches around. And right now, it's like you're excited, but at the same time, now I'm feeling the nervousness because I didn't have much time to adapt. You're gonna be there straight. The best thing was I knew my mentor, my senior S&C coach, Warren Andrews, who was going to be there. We have had good relationship, good trust between us. So that was always, a relief for me. Also had briefly worked with Justin Langer back at the Wacker, worked with Adam Voges. So that was, again, a bit of a comfort zone, but still, that's only a part of it where there's so many other faces that I have to interact with. On my flight, I haven't slept the whole night, but I'm still, wide awake, had my coffee. I reached Lucknow around 9 o'clock. 10 o'clock, I was at the hotel. Had a quick sort of intro with the coaches, some players. We had a meeting actually, like a sports science, sports medicine meeting, quickly for an hour. 2 o'clock, I was in the gym. So I was attending my first gym session. And, the first player walks in was Nicholas Puran. Like, okay, so one of the biggest player in the franchise walks in. And yeah, and then there's a whole influx of athletes who were coming down every half an hour, every an hour. And for me, I have to quickly adapt, like just get straight into it. So yeah, no, that's how it all
Wow.
started. Yeah.
But I guess it really helps because you are familiar with people and you didn't really have a lot of time to adjust. But because it was so spontaneous and you were on the job straight away, that surely would have eased your nervousness or your nerves, right?
Yeah, right. So I had a bit of an idea, like with the conversation that I had straight up with Warren Andrews at the start, as what was the plan, how we're going to go about it, and because we were in the tournament, this game that's going to happen in a couple of days, the work that was laid out was not very extensive. So it's going to be a bit of a maintenance work that we got to do. The programs were already outlined. Some athletes already have their program from their respective boards, some from the state association. Some of the local athletes, we had to sort of create a program and hand it over and guide them through. So a lot of work was already in place. I just need to understand what needs to be done at that particular time, and more so have conversation with the athletes, because I'm seeing them for the first time. They're straight into the gym. So it takes a bit of a time to understand what the athlete is up to, how he goes about the training. So I wasn't there straight away coaching people, but I was just also firstly was trying to absorb things as what's happening around. And then, it's an environment where there's so many people, like, not just the athletes, the coaches, but the management, the social media people, like the other people who does the logistic, and they're moving in and around. Like, so it's a busy space. So you're always sort of surrounded with people. So, there's a lot of things that's happening simultaneously at times when you're even in your gym environment, which was for me, I was trying to absorb everything. Haven't slept the whole night, and I'm just trying to get a feel of it. But no, I was like, that was my first day, all about exuberance, all about, excitement, all about really being there. You just sort of dream of those days, and then, you're there. So it was fun.
It's like a pinch me moment.
Absolutely.
Pretty much, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you touched on the players' programs. One thing I was curious about is if you have players from different nationalities, different boards, etc. So let's take a hypothetical example. Nicholas Puran, West Indian, probably has some, let's say he has a program from the West Indies Cricket Board versus KL Rahul, who was captain last year of LSG. Right. He would have had a program from BCCI. Is that how it works? And then you sort of are the intermediator between making sure that each of those players follow their respective regimes, protocols, etc.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So the way it works basically is they have the program outline. So some of these athletes would have like a athlete management system, like an app that they have the program in. For us, it's to go through the program and understand, is everything all right on the program? Is there any feedback that you want to give? Is there any gaps that you feel that we might want to do? So most of the time, the programs are pretty comprehensive. Strength and conditioning coaches in today's world, they follow proper philosophy. So a lot of time you'll see a lot of similarity in terms of how the coaches would think. So 90% of the work, it's quite consistent across different boards, different coaches. This other 10%, how you're having your own ideas, own creativity, own philosophy behind it. So do you want to change that? Do you want to tweak it? Because we are in that tournament phase, is you don't want to change too much because players are comfortable doing that for a long time. So you don't want to put out any suggestion that's not required. But there will be some athletes, irrespective of the board, they might just say, oh, I'm here to try something new. And I'm pretty open-minded right now. You take the lead for the program. And my interaction with Shamar was not playing all the games at that point. He just walked up to me.
Sorry, Shamar
Joseph. Shamar Joseph, yeah.
The West Indian fast bowler.
West Indian fast bowler, yeah. So he just comes to me and he's like, bro, I want to do a program. What do we do? I was like, cool. What have you been doing? I was like, haven't been doing much, Jim. I was like, and you see him, he is ripped. He's strong. He's in proper shape. 6% body fat. That's what he is. That's how I remember we had the body scans back then. And I was like, okay,
6% for a fast bowler.
for a fast bowler, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
We were saying maybe you need some extra fat there, but that's how he is. He's naturally well built. He's strong. He's powerful, and we kept a pretty simple program because we always knew that he might just get a game in, and we don't know when. So at the same time, even if the players are not playing any games, they might just go on to field for a couple of overs. You know, they might be an impact player. So there's so many different dynamics that you need to be mindful about. So we kept a proper structure for him, just doing some main lifts, some sort of powers like box jumps, other stuff, some upper lift. And man, the way he went about things was so smooth, so good to watch in a way he was doing stuff. And I was like, it's pretty excited to work with him. And he was pretty receptive about the ideas that I was putting forward. So yeah, so that's one example. But it goes applies to a lot of other players, you know, even though they are not playing in the 11 or 12, they still might go as substitute to field for a couple of overs, you know, so you don't want to overload them. But again, do some proper work within the time frame that we have.
So it's like obviously during season from experience, you're doing more maintenance related work, right? Making sure your body's at its optimal power before each game. So Shamar surprised you.
Yeah.
Which other players surprised you in the sense that you were pretty much like, wow, this is...
Yeah, I would say
Who impressed you the most?
I mean, they're all impressive in different ways. Honestly, you know, I mean, I'll talk about the young players whom I saw, and a lot of these guys who were with us last year. Yudhvir Singh Charak, who is now playing for Rajasthan Royals, strong guy, pretty explosive, you know, full high intensity when he's in the gym. Arshad Khan, who is playing for Gujarat Titans this year as left arm fast bowler, you know, very good future prospect. But they were so good at the stuff that they did in the gym, and I was like, okay. And they now, which also shows the players are keen to do strength and conditioning properly. They're getting all the guidance at the state association in India, at the NCA, and they knew their stuff. Like, you know, so I only had to tweak few things, you know, give them the feedback of what they were doing. Luckily, we had velocity-based training equipments, which would give some objective feedback in terms of their speed of the movement that they were doing. So just to put things into perspective, VBT, what we call there's a small equipment called output that we attach to the barbell, which would then sort of give you a feedback on the speed of the movement on an iPad, which is what we use there. So these guys were pretty proactive. They would take the charge, do their programs properly. KL Raul, who was doing a bit of his prehab plus strength work, pretty professional, always on time, do things, outline properly, a pretty good guy to talk to, open for feedback, if any. Yeah, and pretty chilled out, like, you know, will go about his work. So that was a great experience. But one player that I would like to point out here is Kyle Mayers.
Another West Indian.
West Indian,
Yeah.
huge guy, opening batsman. Man, the way he jumps would surprise you because he's such a big bat, you know, like his broad jump was like, I would say close to 3 meters. Yeah. Wow. Like almost more than 2.5 meters. Like, and he was pretty explosive. Again, pretty quiet guy, didn't talk much, but proactive at the same time, very receptive, very respectful. Yeah, so those were the players that, you know, when you're working with them, you know, you're learning so much about how they go about their own work, their professionalism, the respect towards the game that they have, maintaining themselves in terms of, you know, what's required from that at this point. So I think those small things were really, really, you know, rewarding in a way to be in that environment. It's not just about what you do, but also what you take away being around this big place.
Mm-hmm. So was it always smooth sailing when you look at all these players at that level? Because my expectation, if you're playing in the IPL, is that there's a lot of discipline. Were there some discipline issues that occur? Like, let's say someone's late or someone's skipping sessions. Is that because that's normal in our lives, right? Sometimes you're like, yeah, not today. But does that happen in the IPL?
It does to a point. I think most players are very respectful and they do their things, but sometimes they might just get delayed for no reason. Also, sometimes just the nature of IPL, the schedule, their late night games, which which goes until midnight. By the time the players get to the hotel, there's a bit of a celebration if they win. Also, uh, there's so much of conversation that happens at the end of the match once they get to the hotel. So by the time they all go to sleep, it's like almost morning, like it's all 4 o'clock, right? So different people might have different plans. Sometimes, we might have a session with a player at 1 o'clock, but then, he hasn't got enough sleep. So he might need that a delayed session, by an hour or so. So things might get back and forth a bit, and we have to be flexible around it. No one means disrespect. No one wants to be indisciplined per se, but it's just that there so many things, so many parameters that needs to be considered in that environment. Same thing, it's about having a bit of a sponsorship even, where some players might have to go for a shoot, which might come up at the last minute. Sometimes it's not scheduled properly. Sometimes it's like a last minute that they might have to go for a shoot. So there's so many other dynamics that they have to go through, which we as a support staff may not be aware about it. Plus the person, what they are going through psychologically, those things may impact, not their discipline, but it might put off their routine, in certain way. um, I didn't experience as someone being really indisciplined as such. So there used to be some delay. Sometimes the player is not showing up 10 minutes into the session, but then obviously they had their own reasons for it, which we were pretty flexible about. Uh, but yeah, that's what this that nature, the environment is all about. And as a support staff, you need to be a bit open minded and be flexible around. Uh, at the same time, if we were pretty sure, like the conversation that we had with the coaches, if we see a real indiscipline, which is very obvious, where players are not following the rules or protocols, there was, a way to deal with it. But fortunately for us, it never happened.
That's fascinating
Yeah.
because I think back in my playing days, there used to be a lot of issues, a lot of troublemakers, and we would like have penalties for it. So either that's a fine, maybe you don't play, you didn't play the game, you don't travel with the team. So we used to have all of those. What I'm interested in knowing is, so with IPL, for those of you who don't know, it's a mix of Indian players and foreign players. And in a playing 11, I think you can have a max of 4 overseas players, and the rest need to be
That's right.
Indian cricketers. So with all this foreign talent that comes in, what is different between the international players and what you see from like youngsters coming through the Indian circuit in terms of professionalism, the way they go about it? What is something that stood out to you that differentiates the two?
Yeah, I think the different in a good way. Like they all do the same thing in terms of their training, their routine, and all. Um, the biggest difference is when a foreign player is sort of selected in a team. Obviously, has a bigger price tag. They're recognized players, and there's only few foreign players who make through because there's only few slots there. So you have to be really good at international level to make it to a franchise team. So for them to be there, there's a lot of expectations, which they know about, and they know they're going to play a key role in within that franchise. Whereas the other young cricketers, young Indian cricketers, if we put into comparison, they are very hungry. They want to prove themselves. They have done well at domestic level. That's why they got picked up in the auction, and now they're waiting for the opportunity. So they're also doing all the right things. Like they're learning from all these big players around. They're keen to put in that extra work, really excited about everything that happens around. So they both are different in terms of where they stand in that spectrum. The expectations would be super high from an international cricketer who comes in, versus for a domestic cricketer, he always has that sort of a leeway where people would give him a bit of a time to adjust and and be able to adapt to that level. But then for them, it's like, okay, I just don't want to be on the sideline. I want to get there. I want that opportunity. So they are sitting there hungry to get in. Some of those young guys might get an opportunity. They might get chance in a playing 11. Let's say if there's an injury or anything else. But yeah, no, they both are equally involved. They have the same level of commitment no matter what. It's just that they're sitting at a different spectrum where the expectations from a international player, whether it's an overseas international player or an international Indian player, there's always in high expectations there. Whereas someone who is into that domestic circuit, who has just got into the team, into the auction, and then got into that squad, the expectations are not that high to start with. So, but then, as I said, they are like really keen to push themselves and make it up. They're waiting for the opportunity.
It makes sense. The follow up to that is, with so much pressure, there's so much at stake, right? You have, well, the price tag. It's like some of these players that get in the auction. I think KL Rahul went for, I can't remember last year. Do you remember?
He was, I think he was getting paid 18 crores,
18
if I'm not wrong,
crores.
last year when he was with Lucknow. Yeah.
18 Indian crore rupees. That would be, I'm not too sure how much that would be
It's
in
two
like
and a half million USD, I guess. Yeah.
2.5 million USD to play for an 8 weeks
Yeah.
worth of tournament.
Yeah.
That's obscene.
Yes.
So with that price tag, that pressure, how do these players cope with it? Do you see them slip through sometimes? If so, how do they get back? Like what's some things you've noticed in that environment?
Yeah, I think it's with my experience with them on a personal level has always been within the strength and conditioning and sort of an environment. Right, I haven't had much in terms of personal conversation on those lines, but I'm just sort of trying to also understand what happens in the sort of in the background. I think they have their coping mechanism. They have their psychologist who would be guiding them through with different sort of technique that they want to deal with different pressure. They have been there for a long time. For most of them, they've been part of this league for more than 10 years, and they've gone through it, so they know what it feels like, what that pressure means to them, what are the expectations around them with the price tag that they have. And over the period of time, being in that situations and had gone through certain technique through some experts that they have consulted with, it sort of helps them to settle down, take a step back, absorb it, understand how they're going to respond to it. Sometimes it might get frustrating for certain players. They might get a bit impulsive, which is what a human emotions is all about. But some players you see, irrespective of what's happening around, even if there are days they're not performing and there's so much things being thrown at them in the form of criticism, they would be calm and composed, being settled down, taking their time, absorbing everything, and then they know the only way they can respond is by performing. That's the end goal at the end of the day. And they have to get back to their basics, have a chat with the coach, understand what has gone wrong and how they can sort of work on those mistakes or that downfall that has happened, and then come back through it. So I think it's a process at the end of the day that they have to go through. From a support staff standpoint, you're not much involved with that. Your goal or your role, lot of times sticks to what's happening within the gym or on the field in terms of their warm up, running. So we don't end up too much with those conversations. Maybe if you're there with the franchise for a long time, then you may have that sort of relationship where those conversations may happen. As of now, me being there for that first season, I never ended up having those conversations with players in terms of knowing the psychological side of it. But this is what I understand just with what's happening around is, they have their coping mechanism to deal with those situations.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if a team carries a psychologist with them at all times, but you're saying that they do.
For Lucknow Super Giant as a franchise didn't have a psychologist.
Oh, okay.
Like who was on board. But there are certain franchises they have it, who they would have like a proper full-time nutritionist and a psychologist with their franchise. But all these players right now, all professional players, they have their own psychologist or nutritionist that they're sort of consult with. So being in this environment, you need that. You cannot undermine, the psychological aspect and the nutritional aspect and anything else, that comes with it. So they all have those people who are helping them out in the background. Uh, but yeah, more so whether franchise have them in full time capacity or no, it's a difference. It's different for different franchises. Yeah,
That makes sense because each year the players keep changing.
that's
So,
true. Yeah,
but what I'm hearing is obviously LSG, where you were, Lucknow Super Giants, is a team, right?
yeah.
But then each of the players have their own personal teams in terms of their nutritionist, maybe, or their, I don't know, S&C coach, um, their personal psychologist.
Yeah.
So players have a support system around them, right? So it's not necessarily that LSG or the franchise would have these. The player is allowed to bring in their own help, so to say, or like their personal team.
With some players might get an exception. It's not an option for everyone. So their support team may not come with them. They may not stay in the hotel, but they might be available just for consultation online or something or over the phone. Personal help in terms of if there's a player who needs that, and I've seen that with KL Rahul. He had his sort of an assistant guy who is to be around him. Uh, he's a star player. He has to deal with so many of his sponsorship, brand, and HR and other stuff that sort of works in the background. So he had an extra person that I've always saw who was around him to help him out. Some of the other big players would have the same, I guess. I don't know exactly, but then it doesn't allow all players to have their individual, sort of support stuff. I would say to be with them because once you're part of a franchise, you're part of the team. You have to be in that sort of a bubble there, and you can bring your family in. Yes, families were allowed. Your friends were allowed. Some relatives were allowed if they will come down for a game or so, but it didn't allow personal nutritionist or a psychologist for that matter to come down and be with that player for the whole league. Wasn't uh, sort of a thing that was a part of the franchise. If it was really required at that point, there would be exceptions, but that would be one off where they'll have a chat and then that's it. But nothing that was like a sort of a long term thing that went on for the whole league here.
Interesting because I read an article, I think it was a couple of months ago, where BCCI, obviously that's Team India, put a limit on the amount of people each player can have in terms of personal support staff traveling with them. So I think Virat Kohli used to have his personal chef with him, and he used to travel. So that they've clamped down on that, and that's a similar thing with IPL as well.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
Okay.
Again, I said like with different franchise might be different. Like the exception in terms of having a chef. Again, that's something I'm not entirely sure about. If there was a personal chef for any of the Indian players per se, could be a thing.
Yeah.
But it also depends upon what franchise allows the players to do.
So each franchise would
have their
has
own
different protocols.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now they might follow some protocol that might be outlined by BCCI, but within that, if they are flexible to allow players to have certain privilege, it's all onto them. But again, with my understanding, there's always gonna be a certain limit to what a player would do, and they might get certain privilege, but then not everything.
Something I was thinking about is it's such a packed schedule. 8 weeks. I think there's 75 matches in total.
That's
From
right.
Group stages all the way to playoffs and then your final. Each team plays the other team twice.
Yeah, I think it's slightly different. It's 14 games, so.
So yeah, 14 games in
But
8 weeks.
yeah, so they normally would play 5 teams twice
Okay.
and 4 teams once. So that's 14 games.
Okay.
Yeah. So the five. So there's the way it works is I'm not sure if you have seen this before. When it's since it's been 10 teams, they are divided into 2 groups of 5. So what you're going to do basically is you're in 2 group of 5. So the one team up here, you play with the remaining 4 teams twice, and you play one team in the other group twice. So that's 8 matches, And then the remaining 4 teams in the second group, you're going to play it once. So that's 14 games. Does that make
Oh.
sense?
Is that the same this year as well?
Yeah, it's been there for the past
Oh,
4 years. Yeah.
because I've always thought they play each team twice.
They
That-
used
that
to
would
that
make-
used to be until 2021 when there were 8 teams. Since it's been
Ah.
10 teams, they play, as I said, the 5 teams would be twice. So that makes 10 games, right? Home and
Yeah.
away, home and away. And the other 4 team, it can either be an away game or a home game, but you're going to play only once. That's how it
Oh,
makes
okay.
14 games.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But now the plan is from 2028, which I just saw a couple of days back, is to have what you're talking about, the home and away games. But that will be 18 games in all.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Like the math.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah, that would be 18
Yeah.
games, and then the total game would go up to 95. Right now, with 74 games, that's how it works. And I only figured out last year, honestly.
Yeah.
While I was with the team, I was like, oh yeah, okay. So the thing with Punjab last year, right? We played only a home game with Punjab, but we didn't go to Dharmshala for a away game. Same thing, we went to Bangalore for an away game to play against Bangalore, but Bangalore didn't come to Lucknow. So we didn't
So
play
is
a
it
home game.
randomized?
I don't know what the
Okay.
schedule
Yeah,
is. Yeah. So, but if you now look back at the schedule, you would find this thing happening where a team would play 2 games with a franchise, but they only might play 1 game with one of the franchise, either a away or a home game. So that's how the 14 games would happen. Yeah.
The reason I was bringing up how packed the schedule is because if you're playing 14 games in 8 weeks and you're traveling back and forth, that's a lot to handle. So what role does recovery and mental reset play in such a packed schedule, but not just for the players, but also the coaching staff, the support staff, all of that?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting question. It's just like the way the schedule is right now. I mean, if you see the whole sort of tenure that goes from we started on 23rd of March, it will go up to 24th of May. So that's 8 weeks plus the playoffs and the finals. So that's another add plus 1 week to it. So there is a time when the schedule is a bit packed, and there are time when the game is a bit spread out. For some franchise, it might be back-to-back home games, which would be a bit of a relief that they don't have to travel back and forth. But sometimes for a franchise, it would mean that their first half might be a bit of a travel to 3 different venues. So recovery, but obviously it's a key role. You have like 4 massage therapists or 5 massage therapists as a part of your team. You have like 2 or 3 physios, and that's how the back end team is there. It's ready for you, to with everything that they need in terms of recovery. So your ice bath, your sort of your compressions, your massage, everything is planned accordingly. From a player standpoint, again, once they have back-to-back games, the whole point is to be ready for the game. So sometimes their practice session might be cut into nothing. Like, they may not just have a practice session, because they're playing game today and there's a game happening, in a day's time. So, and then they're traveling. So I remember last year we played against, I can't remember the team that we played at home, and we had to travel next morning to Kolkata, and we had a game the following day. So we literally left in the morning. We reached Kolkata. By the time we got to hotel was 7 o'clock. And next morning we had a game. So it was a day game. So we had a game at 2 o'clock. So, you literally had less than 24 hours from the time you reached the hotel. So no practice, nothing. You get there. The ice bath was set. Players were more so focusing on the recovery. Next morning they got up. They're getting ready for the game. So you always end up such situations where things are so tight, and recovery plays an important role. All franchises have the respective people who have their plan jotted down. They'll have the conversation with the players, what they need at that particular point, have the schedule in for the whole day. And those are the days when things get cramped up. The physios and all the masseurs, they are super busy. But then within that time frame, there's always going to be a week where the games might be a week apart. Like now, as an example for Lucknow this time around, they had their last game last Sunday, and now next game would be in Dharmshala in a week's time. So that allows players to take a bit of a time off. Some players because they live in and around, they might go home for a couple of days just to relax,
Okay,
chill.
that's allowed then. You
That's
can,
allowed,
okay.
yeah. When it's a long time off, there's a 2 or 3 days off people would get. So some players might just want to be at the hotel, do nothing. Some might want to go for a travel. And I just heard that Hyderabad team went to Maldives for like
Yeah.
quick 3 days,
Yeah.
So there's different ways, there's different options again, and that's an opportunity that the team deserves, the player deserves to regenerate in that time frame that they have. So different franchise does different things. Different players have different choice once they have that break in between, and then once that is done, okay, there's a time that you have to be back, and then expect the players to be back and get going for the next game or so.
Fascinating, because I thought 8 weeks you're just with the team. That's it. Like you can't go anywhere because in India, obviously, the crowd's crazy. And if you're a superstar, you're not getting out in terms of like other than home, I don't know where you'd go. So did you see a difference between, let's say, some of the local cricketers going home, let's say, during a break like that, versus someone like KL Rahul and all these guys? Like, would you see them going out and about for a bit, or were they just like, okay, I'm just going to stay in the hotel because it gets too frenzy when you go outside?
Yeah, I remember KL Rahul went home last time after the Hyderabad game, which we lost quite badly, and then there was a week off after that. Our next game was in Delhi after that, so there was a bit of a time off in between. So he went home. I think all that thing is well managed, depending upon what the players need, and also good for him to have that break, be with his family for a while and then get back. So those things are well sorted, like those are properly planned. He's got people to look after those things. Few other players went home, which I know about. Just had a bit of a break because it's a long break. It's like 8 days. I remember it absolutely, nothing. Like in that 8 days, like there's 3-4 days. There's nothing planned because you need that time off, and then it's only that last couple of days, 4 or 5 days, we're going to get back into training. So there's always a chance that it's an option. It's not a compulsion, but some players choose to do. They might want to go away. I remember some support staff went to Agra.
I was just
what's
going to
it-
ask, can support
Yeah,
staff travel
yeah,
as well?
yeah. So
Okay.
they went to Agra to see the Taj Mahal and all. I was in Lucknow.
Did you try? Yeah. Did you
No,
travel?
I didn't. No, I was in Lucknow for an extra day. So I was unwell at that point for a day. So I had to stay back in Lucknow for a day. And then I came to Hyderabad. And then there was time that, we just catch up, had a bit of a dinner with the team, all the players, all the coaches. We just had dinner at the hotel, which was fun. It's time to catch up, have a chat, meet the family of the team, and just to know each other more properly outside of the outside of the gym environment or the field. It just makes it so much more easy to connect with people. So but this league also provides that opportunity. We always have those window to catch up with different players, know them more personally, and have those conversations. So yeah, we had that time in Hyderabad, in Delhi to a point. Yeah, and then that's how it all went about. Yeah.
Gotcha. And obviously, your role was an assistant S&C coach, right? What would you say was the most challenging part of being an S&C coach within such a high profile franchise? And what were your biggest challenges?
I think that the biggest challenge within that is the whole structure of the tournament, because it's so fast paced and so dynamic, and there's so much of things happening. Plus, there's so many players. There's 30 players if you see the whole squad. So you're not managing a small team. It's a big massive team, and everyone came with different expectations. Everyone came with a different plans and structure for themselves. So for me, in that particular year, is to understand quickly where each one is up to. What is this player doing? What is that player doing? What has he been doing in the past? What has this player doing in the past? So that quick learning, quick adaptation was the key, and that was challenge to start with, because now at a time when you have 4 players in the gym, and I have to absorb everything from different players, see how they go about in terms of their programming, in terms of their goals, in terms of, what they need out of that program. So what they need out of me in terms of, my role. So it's just that dynamic nature of it. Now, once you settle down, once you spend a bit of a time and understand the players, things get easy. It's not just a start where you're trying to adapt. It takes a bit of time. Once you start understanding where each one is at, what the need of this player is, what is he exactly doing in terms of program, things starts getting easy. Also, it takes a bit of a time to build a trust and the relationship. So for me, I always had to take a step back and understand a bit in terms of what's happening. Slowly started having conversations, started putting in my coaching cues, and then you see there's a relationship that's established. Once you have that trust, things gets easy. Then you have conversation with players, understand a bit more about them. But yeah, the challenge is the quick adaptation, that how we go. The other thing also, not just with players, but also with the coaches, what the coaches are expecting, what the physios are expecting. What is their philosophy? How do they go about things? What do we do when a player has reported a niggle, right? So what is the feedback from the physio? What do we then do from a strength and conditioning standpoint? How do we modify things? That within those normal athletes, there will be some players who might have things that needs modification, changes in terms of their small niggles or any major injury that might have happened. So yeah, there's a lot of things that would come up, but with the experience, with conversation, with communication that happens within, things get sorted eventually.
And within LSG, was it pretty well drilled in terms of the systems in place? Or was it, let's say someone has a niggle and then it's just all panic stations? Everyone's like, oh God, what do we do?
Yeah, we had a perfect example of Mayank Yadav last year.
Mayank Yadav.
Mayank Yadav, yeah.
He's that kid who, the really fast,
150 is the fastest bowler in India now.
Yeah, 150 is what, 90...
156
95?
kilometers. Yeah, around
95
there.
miles?
Around there, 95 miles. So he got injured playing his second game in the tournament, third game in the tournament. He got a side strain. And, he was a big hype last year. In fact, even now, this year is like a big name.
Everyone's just waited
for him.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And they're all checking on that, with that speed machine as what is he bowling at. So last year when things happened with him, he got injured. So obviously it puts everyone in panic in a way. Okay, what happened? What went wrong? A lot of questions asked. Is it the bowling? Is it something else? What's happening? How do we then go about the plan? So the way strength and conditioning role works is we rely on the feedback from the doctors. If there's a scan done or if there's any medical intervention that went about. Second, we wait for the feedback from the physio as what they think is a contraindication, what need not be done in this scenario. Based on that, our job is to work with the player and make sure he retains his strength and he retains his conditioning. So in his scenario, I would say there was a bit of a contraindication that he may not be able to do certain movements. So we would restrict those, we would avoid those, and then work with what he can do. In terms of conditioning, obviously now with certain injuries, a player may not be able to run properly or he may not run at the same intensity. So can he run at a reduced intensity? If reduced intensity are painful, then can he do like a modified training, like different modality, like bike? Or can he do some other thing, like an elliptical? So, you start finding ways to modify things. That's how the strength and conditioning would work, working with the athlete who undergoes rehabilitation, who has gone through any sort of major injury, and then sort of work in conjunction with his rehab program that he's doing with the physio. So there will be a point that he would progress from the rehab standpoint. And then once he's ready, once he's pain-free, we're going to start making him move in different directions. So the movement comes first, and then we start loading. And then, there's like few different steps that he goes through before he starts playing again.
Couple of things I want to sort of decode over there. One is a lot of people who don't necessarily, let's say, play at the elite level, often train like an athlete, but don't necessarily know the nuances of when they're picking up a niggle or when they might be like actually damaging themselves quite a bit. So my first question is, how can an average person who trains like an athlete or just trains in general pick up on the niggles, and what's the first thing to do once you have understood, okay, some things are not quite right, rather than harming it more?
Yeah, I think first thing,
Like best practices.
yeah, I reckon the best thing to do at the point is to consult a physiotherapist. That's a medical practitioner. Uh, in general, first thing as a player, if I'm in the shoe, is to understand what is the pain level like. Being a bit objective or subjective to a point, but also thinking it from an objective standpoint. What is the pain level like? What is that out of 10? Okay, and I feel, oh, it's only 2 out of 10. Okay, it's okay. You may not have to go through a physio straight up, and unless you have resources, right? If I have a physio that I don't need to pay for, if it's my team physio, let's go and report it. I'm talking in a high performance environment. He can go and report to a physio of every small thing that happens. Like, oh, I'm feeling a bit of a pain up here. The physio might assess, oh, what's the pain like? 2 out of 10? Oh, no problem. Just take a bit of a rest. You should be okay. Or he might just do some assessment. But now you're talking about an average person, right, who may not have a direct access to a physio. He might self-assess his pain first as like, what is that pain like? 2 out of 10 pain. Okay. What is that niggle like? Where is it happening? Knee. In general, if anyone reports a knee pain, the first thing from a medical practitioner will look at is their hip mobility and ankle mobility. A lot of time, the issue at the sort of the proximal or the distal joint might cause an issue around the knee. So just an example that I'm talking about, and then see if that is causing an issue. So those are few things that they can self monitor, self sort of observe. But then if the pain is like 5, 6, 7 out of 10, which is like now you're making you seriously uncomfortable, go to a physio, get that consultation done. Don't make it worse. Don't assume things. The physio would assess you. He would determine what's going wrong. Is that like a structural injury, or is that like sort of a soft tissue inflammation? Right? A couple of things might be there. And then he would give you a right direction of, why that has happened in the first place. Is that an impact thing, or is that like a more so, restriction, as I said, in the other joint that's causing that? Then follow a proper rehab plan, understand your own body, like why did that happen in the first place? And then slowly start building, the strength program on top of your rehab. And then do it more regularly. Like a lot of mistakes, what general athletes do is they do the rehab plan when they feel the pain, and they stop doing it. That's the biggest mistake people do is, oh, I would do foam rolling because my back is stiff. You got to do foam rolling irrespective. Like every day, your muscle, your fascia is going to get tight with all the workload that you do. Okay, so you're going to do foam rolling every day. May not have to spend a lot of time doing it, but still got to do it. Your mobility should be every day. It's not like, oh, I'm feeling restricted in my hamstring, so I'm going to do it. And there's a pyramid there. Like the base of the pyramid is your mobility, flexibility, stability. Okay? So you have to do your foam rolling, your activation, your mobility. All those stuff comes there. Your strength, or hypertrophy, your power, everything, speed, agility. It builds on that pyramid. So for a general person who's still playing a sport or trying to be fit in general life, don't neglect the pyramid. It's always
Mobility, flexibility, stability.
stability. Yeah.
Okay.
So those are your key foundation. Everything else would build onto it. And a lot of time you see people getting into gym, they're just gonna roll their arm, just stretch a bit, and then straight away get into the gym. How many
Off
of us
they
do
go.
that? Off they go. And sometimes I know I'm saying this right now, but I've been through that. I've been through those phases. Like you're so excited to lift weights, you want to go
we all
heavy.
have.
But we all have, yeah. But now you realize that the time you feel any pain, I know where I'm going wrong. I didn't do the foundation work. And then I preach this to my athletes, or the people that I train. I want to do things by myself first. And now I be so conscious about things I do. Is like, I want to do my rehab properly or prehab properly, do foam rolling, spend that time. I don't want to be under any sort of pain. So that's how I would start thinking. And that's the same philosophy or for suggestion, advice that I would give, whether it's athlete at any level, is do the foundation work right. Everything else will fall in place.
So most people know what rehab is. What is prehab?
Prehab is injury prevention, is what you do well in advance. So what I was just saying right now is doing all those prerequisite work, the foundational work, is a way to prevent injuries. And that's what we call as a prehabilitation.
Yeah.
So that way you do that first, get your body moving nicely, and now start doing your actual compound movement, and then add strength, like add weights to it. So that way you're adding strength, you're adding speed, adding power, then build everything on top, But if you neglect the basic, the foundation, and you start doing all this thing, you might be able to get through 1 week, 2 week, maybe 8 weeks, and then your body starts breaking down. It may happen early, but and then people think, oh, you know what? I got injured because I did the jump. No, it's not the jump. It's the work that you're not doing at a foundation level that's causing that injury. A lot of time people think instantly is, oh, you know what? I did this drill that guy showed me and I got injured. But they don't know the real reason of the injury. It's not a thing that you do then itself, unless it's an impact injury, unless you really twisted your ankle, badly. That's a different story altogether. But if you did a proper jump or you did a proper squat and you think, oh, it's a squat that caused me injury and I don't want to do it again, no, it's not the squat. It's the work that you haven't been doing properly at a foundation level that's causing this issue up here.
Because the reason I asked that about prehab is obviously, for those of you who don't know, you actually trained me, right? So you've made a lot of programs for me. And honestly, pretty tough programs, but the structure of it is always prehab, compound movements, and then rehab, or accessories and then like rehab stuff if needed. But prehab was always prevalent in every single session, right? And for me personally, after doing that, I have found, so I used to feel a little bit of tightness in my right hip flexor. And up until then, I sort of got derailed when it comes to doing prehab and like warming up. I sort of went down the route of, hey, I'm just going to roll my shoulder, do a bit of this, and then a bit of stretches, and then off I'm going to go. But ever since doing your programs, I felt a lot more safer. Like my joints feel a lot more free, and the fact that it's actually adding strength to my actual compound movements as well. That's why I wanted to ask you what's the importance of prehab then, right? Like, and I personally felt very, very, I could just feel the difference. And now my routine's like, okay, I sometimes even take 20 minutes to warm up. Now, obviously I'm not just like stretching every single part of my body, but foam rolling is like a must regardless of what I'm doing or how I'm feeling, I guess. Because the feelings where people screw up a lot. Right. And then I'm also doing a lot of like ankle work because we worked on my squatting and stuff, which has never been an issue, but like you feel the difference and how loose it becomes once you do those prehab stuff properly. So I definitely have a lot of appreciation for the prehab work. And I don't think a lot of S&C coaches actually they call it warm up, but their warm ups aren't as intricate as your warm ups.
Yeah, I think first thing we need to understand what warm up is all about, and let's put things into perspective. Is what's the time frame that you want to use to do a warm up? You said 20 minutes, right?
It's become 20 and
20 minutes. Yeah.
As the older I get, it's probably.
But let's put things into perspective. Right?
Okay.
Now, 20 minutes is like in terms of even for preparing yourself for a skill session or a game. People would take anywhere between 10 to 20 minutes. Let's say at an average, if you take 15 minutes for warming up. Now, how many times in a week are you going to warm up?
Depending on how many days you work out.
So let's say if you work out 6 times a day, that's 90 minutes a week.
6 times a week. Not
6 times a week, sorry, yeah.
6 times a day would be...
Six times a week, so that's 90 minutes. That's 360 minutes roundabout in a month, right? So that's plenty of time. That's a lot of time that you spend warming up. And a lot of time, and this is what I've also learned over the period of time. Now, I, as a young kid, warm up was just like a couple of jogs, just do some stretches and get ready. Right? That's what it was all about. We haven't emphasized on coaching warm up or doing some proper technique work within it, doing the warm up right. And warm up today is, even for today, when you see some athletes doing it, they're pretty casual. People like to talk during the warm up. Okay, they might want to have conversation. They're not worried about what their technique, their form is. Are they breathing properly? So I feel there's a lot of importance now, with the lesson that I've learned over a period of time is to make sure that warm up is structured. Okay. And it's if you do your warm up properly, you're going to do your main program properly. So if you warm up properly before a game or before a skill session, your skill session would be enhanced. You will be performing better. It's just going to be, like a quite relative work that would happen, right?
So could you explain the correlation between your warm up and how it influences your performance when it comes to your main workout or let's say a sport that you're playing?
It just being mentally and being physically and psychologically be ready for the game. So physically, in a standpoint, you're moving your different joints to that full range of motion. Your muscles are getting stretched out. You're moving into specific movement that you're going to actually do in a sport. So what we call as a general warm up, transitioning into specific warm up. And that's going to be like you're going to start with some general work, and then you move into doing some sport specific work per se. Once you do those phases properly to those full range, working through sort of the right stretch as well as breathing properly, it just when you actually get into skills right after that, your body is ready to move. Also mentally, your core temperature is now upright, so you're feeling that heat, you're feeling that warmth, you're sweating a bit, and now mentally you're ready. There's the blood is rushing through your muscles, the hormones are flowing through, you're ready and excited, fully focused to get into that skills right now. So there's a direct correlation, like in terms how the warm up is done, but it has to be structured. It has to have purpose behind how you do your warm up. Your warm up is like it's like your strength session. You need coaching, and I emphasize a lot of coaching within the warm up. Like I would reinforce the cues when people are warming up. Like if you're doing a lunge, come on, get the back knee straight down, keep the weight on that front leg. So those cues during the warm up is as similar as doing a lunge as an exercise. And it's going to be the same thing. What are you actually going to do in a sport? You're hitting a sweep shot where you're going to lunge down. The fact that you have practiced this for that 360 minutes a month, right, give or take, you're going to get it right when you do it in a sport. You're not going to you're going to fall off. You're going to be super stable because you have been consciously doing that work for such a long time. So that time frame, we need to utilize it better. And I think that's the reason why that structure is, and a lot of this philosophy is now being used by a lot of strength and conditioning coaches around, is to use the warm-up more properly and really enhance it in a way that it sort of reflects to what happens, whether it's a strength or a skill or a game day.
Yeah, the reason I asked that is because there are a lot of players or just people who play a sport but don't necessarily train or go to the gym. Or maybe they do go to the gym. I've had so many people who go to the gym, they're like, yeah, today I'm doing a push day. Tomorrow, yeah, I'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll do a pull day. And their warm-ups are pretty shit, to be fair. Could you give us a very simple warm-up routine for someone who's listening that could take it and start utilizing warm-ups in their own training life?
I think there's always steps. I think the first step to do is foam rolling. Foam rolling, it just sort of releases your fascia. Fascia is like a connective tissue that sits on the muscle. So that would get released. It would ease out. So it would start allowing that blood to flow. If there's any clots, tight spots that's around, you would just hold and press into it. Once that's released, your body would feel at ease. So just as like how you would, do a massage for yourself, this is like a myofascial massage that we call as. That's going to be in step number one. Spend around 5 to 10 minutes, depending upon how much time you need. Maybe initial days you might need an extra 5 minutes, but then as you do it more regularly, less and less time you might want to spend. Mobility, it's a second thing. Mobility is about moving joints. So the difference between mobility and flexibility, when we talk about flexibility, we talk in terms of muscles. When you talk about mobility, we talk in terms of your joint. You talk about your ankle joint, your knee, your hip, your trunk as a joint, where it's rotation, the extension, talk about your shoulder joint, it does so many different things. It's flexion, extension, internal, external rotation. So there's so many different things that happens at different joint. So move those joints in different planes to what they can move, do different movements. Then you do some activation work, which is doing some banded work, just to activate your deep muscles, like your rotator cuffs, your deep hip muscles, your glutes. So that's going to be your step number 3. The fourth step is doing some stability work. The stability work can be done barefoot, just to train your feet muscles. Doing it single leg, more so, just to work on that single leg stability, really getting that sort of neural pathway to understand how to stabilize yourself, and then getting into some sports specific stability work within that, and on top of that you do everything else. So once you do those first 4 things properly, is then your main warm up starts, where you're going to do some dynamic stretching, some running technique work, some side shuffle. There's so many different ways of doing
warm
it.
up to the warm up.
Yeah. This is like a pre-warm up. Pre-warm up.
Okay.
Yeah. I put it down, and if you have seen that in the program, it's physical preparation.
Yeah.
So physical preparation to warm up, like an actual dynamic warm up, to specific warm up. So it might feel so much thing to do, but you got to do it, right?
So what would you say to people who are like, yeah, it's boring, takes time, I don't have time because I work, or they're just busy? What would you say to them?
I think it's a very valid question. Everyone has busy life. People can only dedicate 1 hour, and it's like, oh, warm up is going to be 15-20 minutes. So that takes literally 1/3 of the time within that. And then there's so many other programs, so much of the other program that you got to do. I think in the initial days, it's about having the right priority of what's important. So you might have to spend that extra 20 minutes, and it's okay to spend less time doing your strength work and other stuff. So cap it to 1 hour, no problem, but do that foundation work for a longer time to start with. So even if you don't have time, what's the time that you have now? 1 hour? Cool. Spend that 1/3 of the time doing warm up. Mm-hmm. If you got 30 minutes, do 10 minutes of warm up and do 20 minutes of your main workout. So prioritize that, because what's going to happen is you're doing all the right thing. You're ticking off right boxes, because you don't want to build strength on dysfunction. It's going to break down. You have to understand that. It might feel okay week 1, week 2, week 3, you'll start breaking off. A dysfunctional body is not going to get strong. Okay? It's not going to get strong. It's not going to get powerful. It might feel that way, but it's going to break down. So you want to create a very functional, robust system within you. And the way to go about it is doing all the things at the foundation. So that's how we're going to see it. Once we start changing the perspective, and understand the importance of it, you start and take the initiative of doing the right thing, things will fall in place. You'll start liking it. I know it's boring. I know I'm lying down on a foam roller. I remember back during the badminton time, we used to have a 6 o'clock session. 6 o'clock start. So athletes used to get there at 5:45. First thing was foam rolling. People used to literally lie down on their back for a nice good 5 minutes. I was like, what's happening here? Like, I'm foam rolling. I was like, that's not how you do it.
Yeah.
You can't just lie down for like 5 minutes on your back. But it's just that that's something, it's just in human nature. Like, if warm up, like, it's a universal thing. It's not, a category of people who don't want to do it. It's universal. No one likes to do it properly because it's boring. It's very monotonous. It's like, it doesn't give you any excitement because it's so slow, and you're taking that extra time. And I've been through that. And I'm still sometimes get slack with my own warm up. So I understand. But then that's the key. Okay. And if you do those things right, for most athletes, they may not even have to see a physio because their body would be so well shaped. Yep. Physio would be just there to doing some tweaks around, some maintenance work, but they don't have to see a physio because you have already taken care of yourself. There's the other thing, if you think when you normally have some niggles and you go to a physio, what does the physio ask you to do? Have you been through a physio lately?
Well, I kind of tore my calf last year. And the first thing he was like, oh, what was your mobility, your ankle mobility like? That was the first thing he sort of pointed out and asked me. And I was like, yeah, it was pretty okay. But then hypothesis of what had happened was my quads and my hamstrings are a lot stronger than my calves. And you can probably visually see that as well.
Yeah.
And he said that your calves are not as strong. And due to that, sometimes when you're squatting or you're running around, the pressure that your quads and hammies exert through the rest of your leg, your calf couldn't take it. That is why even growing up, once I started doing a lot of SNC, I started having issues in my Achilles when I used to play, right? And that used to, again, even back then, the physio was like, oh yeah, your calf's not able to take the strain. So that's why your Achilles is now sort of bearing the brunt of it. And the moment I think the Achilles gave up, that's when the calf just went pop.
Right.
So his first thing was mobility. Like, how mobile is your ankle was the first thing he said.
Right. That's it. So it's all started at the foundation. That's
Yeah.
my point, right? So also, I would say you might also look at your feet muscle. They might be sitting a bit tight underneath, which might cause the restriction at your ankle. So
Would it, like, let's say if someone has flat feet versus a high arch, would that play a difference?
it does to a point. It does to a point, but also depends upon how much of your arch or your flat feet would cause the restriction in the ankle mobility. I'm talking more in terms of tightness around that foot muscles, like underneath. Like your arch might be like setting that, like those muscles around the arch might be setting super tight. Where you see people nowadays, physios might prescribe some foam rolling or a lacrosse ball rolling on their feet just to release those foot
That
muscles.
hurts.
Right? And does, right?
Like DOMs, right? Because you might have DOMs over there.
Absolutely. Because the foot goes through, or those muscles underneath goes through so much of stress with a lot of running, jumping, and stuff that we do in terms of playing a sport. So at the end of it, what are we doing? We're doing foam rolling or a lacrosse ball rolling, and then we're doing mobility.
Yeah.
So we're still doing the foundation work to address any pain, right, or any injury. And then strength. Yes, of course. So there will be some imbalance based on the assessment that the physio had. So in general, like this is just a general understanding that people should have, it's not just about performance enhancement, but it's also about injury prevention. So everything that you do in terms of foundation, it's not just about getting better at a sport or better at an activity. It's also about avoiding the, prevalence of the injury. Okay, now you cannot prevent injury, although we say injury prevention, you cannot prevent injury, right? It's injury reduction is how much the probability of reducing the injury versus preventing altogether. We cannot do that because those things are not in our control. Some things might happen even doing all the right things, but at least doing all the right things would ensure that the occurrence of the injury might be reduced significantly.
That makes a lot of sense to me now. Why my calf went pop last year was because I stopped playing cricket in June 2021, and I took like a 3-year sabbatical.
Yeah.
And then last year went back in, and I thought, okay, I've done this before. And in those 3 years, like I did a lot of lifting, so gym stuff, my powerlifting, all my compound lifts. My warm up was not the strongest. In fact, I wouldn't say it was non-existent. I did, but it was like your basic stuff until it came to running. And I think we were outdoors for the first time in April or May, first week of May. So this time last year. And I remember we were doing one of those drills where you lie on your chest on the ground and it's like a get up, turn around, run, and the ball gets hit it was a fielding drill. And we had warmed up properly, or so to say. We were done our jogs, a few stretches here and there, the whole warm-up drill, because the team does it together, right? We did all of that. I remember going down, and it was randomized. So we all would be down, and the coach would call someone's name who would have to get up and go. And he called my name. So I got up, spun around, took my first step to run, and pop it went. So and I couldn't walk for, I think, 4 weeks. I was on crutches. But when the physio saw me, etc., he gave me this warm-up routine. I was like, oh, God, this is going to be super boring. But what was so weird was when I was playing professionally, it was all dialed in. Like, I need to do my warm-up. I need to make sure that I'm ready to go when needed. And I understood it. But as soon as I started playing cricket as a hobby, my mindset just went, why do I need to do it now?
Yeah. I think I'll just share my thoughts on this. Is if you ask people who play a sport as a hobby and ask them, why do you play sport, and they'll say, I play to be fit.
Yeah.
Oh, just to maintain my fitness. But here's the thing: you cannot get fit playing a sport. You got to be fit to play a sport, irrespective of what level you play. Because here's the thing: the sport doesn't change, does it? If you're playing a sport as a hobby, it's still a demanding sport, right? And so many times when people play that as a hobby, like fast bowlers, they would just come, show up, and start bowling straight up. And they just go and keep bowling, and they don't stop. They haven't warmed up properly. There's no set goals of how many bowls they want to bowl. They do it day in, day out, and they're like, oh, now I've got injured. It's like, and what the point that you said is now when you play a sport as a hobby, you're playing a sport recreationally just to be fit, right? And I think somewhere the perspective needs to be, even if I'm playing it recreationally, it's fun, no problem. But there will be some level of competition. You still want to do well. You still want to perform, go there. You don't want to embarrass yourself, right? But at the end of it, whatever your goals are, you're physically putting yourself through it. And it's your body which is not optimally ready for it. So you still have to do those steps. No matter what level you play cricket, you still want to be fit. Yeah, you may not be extremely fit person, which is a different story, but you need to have some level of fitness. You need to have some level of aerobic endurance. You need to have some level of strength. You need to at least spend 1 or 2 days in a gym doing some basic strength training. Yeah. But if you have time to come and play a sport, even if it's once a week, find time once a week or twice a week to strength train yourself, because that's gonna enhance what your sport that you're playing, even though it's non-competitive, but also the injury. Don't risk yourself for injury, because what's gonna happen if you get injured?
Yeah.
It's gonna put you away from the game. It's gonna take that fun factor out of it, and then you're doing this whole rehab where it's gonna be so unstructured because cricket is not your priority right now, so you're busy with other things in your life. You may not have enough time to do rehabilitation and so many other stuff. It's just frustrating, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're being in that shoe where you wanted to play for fun, but now you can't play because you're injured. So that's where, irrespective of what level you play,
Yeah.
there needs to be some level of strength work, rehabilitation work, as we said, to do. And it doesn't take much time. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't have time." You got time. You got to make time. If you're training your own body. The way it is. This is your gift. This is your own temple that you have, that you live in. You need to find time. It's half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever. Just do some basic work. So that way it puts you in that right frame to
Yeah.
play a sport and enjoy it at the end of it.
That's one of my biggest fears, actually, is now that I'm not a professional athlete or a semi-pro athlete, like losing that tag, I don't want to be disassociated with it ever. But most people that I see, and this is just speaking for myself, is they would be a player or whatever, and then you meet them 10, 15 years down the line and they look different. And it's just like, hey, but you used to be an athlete. Like, what happened there? And for me, I do not want to be seen that way. And it's something I'm trying to, and the only way I could counter that is through this discipline that I have, which is I work out 6 times a week. I have my warm up, which now I think warm up is greater than your workout any day of the week. Like, I don't care if I've worked out, but I got to do my stretches as much as I can. So
Absolutely.
that fear drives me weirdly. And I'm usually a very optimistic guy, but this is one fear that I have, which is like, I don't want to be seen as not an athlete or a former athlete. I still want to train like one, not just, and I want to be, in fact, fitter than some of the current, people who actually play a sport.
Yeah.
And, but that was just a fascinating revelation that sort of hit me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think been an age-old trend. Like once you retire, you're done. Like now you don't have to do all this. You don't have to train, and then you have your own social life. You do whatever you want. You eat whatever you feel like. Um, I think yes, you're not training for sport, but you're still, you got your life. Like you still want to live longer. You want to set the right example for the people who look forward to you. I think the perspective is changing now. A lot of people are started taking care of themselves. Hitting the gym, just training hard, doing all of the stuff, participating in other competitions around, people doing some marathons and other stuff. So there's things happening. There's a lot of other buzz around. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Whether you play a sport or not, being fit should always be a part of your daily life. But then if you're playing a sport, whether it's a recreational sport, like, just for fun, you still got to be fit, still got to make that effort of looking after yourself. And it, when I see this, I say it doesn't take much time. I know sometimes it's life takes over. You got family, you got kids, and there's so much things happening, stress, work stress, like other things. But this is going to help you to get through it. Looking after yourself, being fit, being in the gym, getting your body to that sort of that stress, that exercising, it changes your, the whole mechanism inside, right? So you're gonna feel good about yourself. Those endorphins running around. So it would de-stress you. So then you will be more active around your kids. You'll be more active around your whole life, and then you can go and play sports. So there's so much of benefit that you get by exercising. Irrespective of what phase of your life you're in, you just got to do it.
Yeah. So you personal train as well, right? A lot of clients. How do you navigate this sort of a chat with them where they come to you, they're like, hey, when you have check-ins with them, right? Okay, how's your workouts going? How's the program going? Or yeah, let's say I missed out on a couple of training sessions where I couldn't make time, etc. How do you tackle that with these people, with your clients?
Yeah, I think I have immense respect for general population. Immense respect. I think for athletes, it's their bread and butter. They got to do it. Okay. For me, as a fitness coach or a strength and conditioning coach, being in a gym, it's my comfort zone. I live there, right? So me to get my workout done, it's a no-brainer, right? It's I'm there all the time. But for general population, and let's say if it's mother of two kids, father of three kids, having a high profile corporate job, so many things, so many obstacles around them. Like, they have to deal with their kids first, their wife, their family, their work. So for them to get to a gym, they're going through like 3, 4, 5 steps to be there. They have to manage so many things around. So I have immense respect for people who show up. They're already won. That's how I see them. So I have, first thing is for them to walk in, it's a big win. The second thing is how do I make them consistent? Okay, how do my job is not, it's not about a day or a week. It's about how can we be consistent over a span of 8 weeks, 10 weeks, and then build a habit and make it like a lifestyle, right? It's a big process because sometimes, you might want to do a lot of things when you're motivated, but then sometimes things might just go off, like work takes over, things takes over, and then it's easy for them to go off that track. So for me, it's a process where how do I sort of hold them, okay, and hold them for their own goals. It's not about my business, but it's more so, okay,
Accountability.
the accountability.
Yeah.
You don't want to let them go away of what they decided to do, with themselves. Why did they started this whole journey? And sometimes it's easy to lose that vision, that goals that they had in front of them. So it's always important for me to be objective. Yeah, it's not about how you're feeling. Oh, I'm feeling great today, but there will be day you may not feel great. You still got to do the work, right? So the more I start being objective and show them of how they have progressed, in terms of their assessments, like how we would do assessment with athletes, it's the same process that we follow with general population. Is okay. This is where you were at week 1. This is where you were at week 4. Let's aim to be here in week 8. Okay, so there's something that they're looking forward to. You have to have that vision in mind, the goals in mind. Okay, week 8, oh, we didn't get there. No problem. Okay, where are we? We didn't get here, but we got here. Or maybe we are still there. It's a bit of a plateau. Let us tweak the program a bit. Okay, maybe in week 16, let's aim for this. So it's all about having those progressive goals as where we want to be and how they're responding to it. Things may not happen as per the plan, but then why things went wrong and how we can tweak it. It's that review that we keep having the conversation about, whether it's a weekly review or a bi-weekly review of how we are progressing, what's happening. Are they happy? Are they happy with certain things? Do they want to add certain things? A lot of conversation that needs to happen around those lines. And then having that, that periodized block, what's going to be our goal in that 4-week block, what we're going to do in week 1, week 2, week 3, having that complete understanding of what the whole goal is. If I go just day by day and show up and say, okay, today we are going to do this program, that's it. It's not going to, it might feel rewarding for the day, but they're going to lose the sight once we move on to next day. And then it's easy to give up. But when they have the overview of what's going to happen in 16 weeks and they know how they're progressing to get there, it creates a bit of a pathway for them to be a bit more accountable, be a bit more responsible for them. And I always say, you cannot be 100%. Whoever you are, whether you are an athlete or a general person, we're never going to be 100%, right? Life happens. We want to do 80% right. And that's how I would say it. Do the 80% right. 20% can be
The 80-20 rule.
80-20 rule, yeah. As long as we're doing that 80% right, the 20% can take care of itself. And it's okay if you haven't done the other 20%, at least we have done the 80%. We have that major chunk of it and we keep doing that consistently, we are progressing.
So they say, right? Like, I think if you turn up to the gym 3 times a week, you're already in the top 1% of people who go to the gym.
That's
There's
right.
something along those lines.
Yeah. I don't know the stats about it.
Maybe it's just a saying. But I've heard that a lot.
And it would be. I think there's 7 billion people in the world. Like, that's more than that. Not many people exercise, and which is a sad thing. In just to think about it, is we are not working on things that we live in. That's a thing, just in terms of food habit, right? I read this sort of a saying somewhere that if you have the most expensive car, you're going to put the most expensive fuel in it, right? You're not going to go with any ordinary fuel. But when it comes to your own body, you're ready to put any crap in it.
Especially in today's world with all processed foods. And
Absolutely. And it just opens your mind to say, oh, yes. So if there's a scratch on your brand new car, we'll be upset, right? Whether it's a phone, we'll be so upset. But if our body's getting damaged within, we don't even care, which is sad. That's a reality. And again, like I only had this sort of realization, which I read that quote not long ago. It was only probably a couple of years back. I was like, oh yes. So again, I'm a human and I can't be 100% perfect each time. But then each time, can I take that conscious effort of eating the right thing? Yeah, and if I do that 80 to 90% of the time, I feel I'm doing good. And you feel good about yourself that, you're having the right habit in terms of your eating, about your exercising, about everything else that puts you in the right frame.
Yeah, a lot of people, including myself, I think dieting was something I've really struggled with. Not necessarily eating the wrong types of food, but sticking to it. You'll see me in the gym 6 days a week or 7 days a week if needed. No stress. Dieting was something I really struggled with. I was like, no, I have to have it dialed in, to the point where I started hating the food I was eating. I was like, oh my God, there's no taste. It's, in England, it's like English roast, right? Or like even Indian food, it's great. But then at the same time, you're like, it's a little bit, you'll see the oils or like, ghee and all these kind of things just put in. So I struggled with that for a while. But then I was like, okay, I can't optimize every single aspect of my life. And that's where I found this concept called de-optimizing your life, but not necessarily like just everything just breaks loose. It's like you pick and choose things that need to be de-optimized in order for you to be happy. So with diet, what I did was, okay, I don't have to have 100% clean diet to the T. No, no, no. Let's make sure, in my case, that I'm eating clean 80% of the time, and the 20% no stress. Every now and then you might go out with friends or something. Like what was happening was I was going in within my own, oh, I can't eat that. I can't eat that. I can't drink this. I can't drink that. Versus the moment I de-optimized it a bit and I gave myself a little bit more freedom of like, okay, 80% clean, 20% have fun, man. All of a sudden the diet just sort of fell in place.
Yeah.
And it just really helped me. But a lot of people struggle with this whole concept. And then the second thing that I've learned recently is food is in abundance. The only thing I've seen in Canada, I'm not targeting Canada, but like in Canada is like wherever you go, there's always pizzas around.
Yeah.
Like in our office where I work in my corporate job, anytime there's an event, pizza. And I'm like, really? Like at this point, I'm tired now. So my point is, it's right there.
Right.
It's always there. Drinks right there. Food right there. Sugar. I have a major sweet tooth.
Yeah.
And it's like I crave sugar sometimes.
Yeah.
But what I'm learning is the art of resistance. You have, in order to be successful now, today, you have to resist because everything's at arm's length now. Whatever you want to eat, drink, do. So you need to be able to resist it. And that is such it's so looked down upon. People don't realize it intrinsically. So I did an episode recently on like stimulation and how people do it for stimulation purposes because it just hits the sweet spot, right? And you're like, oh yeah. I'll put my hand up to say that, but resistance and mainly resistance is so critical these days, I feel.
No, absolutely. I think it's about the habit building, right? It's why we sort of respond things in a certain way. It's the habit that we have built over a period of time. And I was like, I've read this book, Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits, yeah.
It's it explains everything so much in detail about why we do what we do and how it all sort of functions. It's just that our mind is so used to subconsciously start doing things, right? That you don't even have to think about the food in front of you. If your habit is just gonna eat it, right? That's what it is. And for majority of the people who are unaware about it, like what's happening, they just simply react impulsively, and whatever is in front, they're gonna eat it. It's all about the awareness that to have. The first thing is the awareness. Do we have the awareness around it? Once you have the awareness, you can start channelizing your habit in a different way. Is okay, now I have the awareness, okay, this is gonna be damaging for my body, my organs. Okay, I'm start trying to have that effect that food would have on me, the negative effect of any junk food that would have on me. Once I start having that conversation with my mind and then say, okay, that's not what I'm supposed to eat because that's not good for me. And then I create a habit of resisting for the right reason. I do it once, I do it twice, and I keep doing it. It then starts building a habit. Now when you see the food is right in front of you and you don't crave for it anymore, because now you have built a mechanism, you have developed that habit of resisting it. So it's a hard thing to do to start with, but it can only be done if you have the awareness. Okay? And you have to create the awareness. You have to understand why that has, why I want to resist it in the first place. The why is important. Is why am I resisting it?
Yeah.
So you need to have all the reasons to resist it.
But if you don't know the reasons, you won't.
You won't. Yeah. And that's going to be the key. And when I started understanding that concept, and when I read that book, I was blown away. And there's so much of habit that I had, that I never thought about it. I wasn't even aware about it. Okay, this is just my routine. You do things in a certain in a particular manner because you're just used to it.
Yeah.
You follow same sequence, and when you start breaking those sequence, you figure out that it wasn't that hard. But the why becomes really important. Is why you're doing it in the first place, the awareness, and then you create a a mechanism to it of starting resisting it. So it's a hard thing to start with, but once you have the right reasons to do it, you would.
I haven't read Atomic Habits, and I've read a lot of books. It's been on my reading list for so long, but I just never got to it.
It's a great book.
Okay.
Honestly, it's gonna have a big impact on your life if you haven't read it.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're thinking about habit building, it's the best thing to read at this point. Yeah,
Yeah, have awareness in order to build resistance.
absolutely. Yeah, awareness is the key. Whatever we do in life is, are we aware about it? Are we present? Are we thinking in that moment of how it's impacting our life? And a lot of things we do it impulsively because we are in that we have that habit of doing it, right? A lot of time I have conversation with people around and they say, "Oh, I can't do this. I just can't do this."
They've already convinced themselves.
They convince themselves. And it's the habit that they have built on to not do something over a period of time that now they think that's reality. And I had a lot of this habit for me. Like I always thought I was never a morning person. I said, always used to say this to everyone around. I'm not a morning person. I hate getting up in the morning. I used to do it for work. But I didn't do it willingly until I started changing the conversation. Okay, let me first try. Let me start getting comfortable of getting up early. So I remember there was a phase when I was in India in 2021, and I've just moved back from Australia, and I was not working at that point. I was just having like a chill time, and then I spent like a week or so, just maybe 2 weeks, just chilling out, like literally sleep at any time, get up at any time. Because it was like 2 weeks of nothing. And then I started getting back into routine. But within that week, I was like, okay, let me start getting up early. And I started making a conscious effort of to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning. For no reason. There's nothing planned. There's nothing. I have absolutely nothing to do.
Long day ahead.
It is. It is. No, what am I supposed to do? But
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
get, okay, let me get up at 4. And I'll get up at 4. Okay, so there's going to be a resistance that would happen that you want to sleep in. I was like, let me get up at 4. Let me do sort of a morning routine. And there's one of the book that I read back then about morning routine and all. Just trying to remember which one. I think it's a 5-second rule. Mel
Okay,
Robbins,
yeah.
Mel Robbins. So I was like, okay, let's try this out. So I started 5-second rule. Get up in the morning, do some physical exercise, just basic, some squats, some push-ups, and all. Do meditation. I have never done meditation in my life until then, like proper meditation. Right? So I started doing that. 10 minutes. That's it. Not more than that. Had a guided meditation and all, and then I started reading. Because I had all this time in my life. For the next month or so. That how do I use it? But then I started building this habit within me. You wouldn't believe. Now till date, since 2021 till date, I've got super comfortable waking up early.
Wow.
Like, and those 3 months that I started practicing this habit, and there might be 1 or 2 days that might have been a bit off, but majority of the time I made that conscious effort. When I first joined my next job, which was at the National Center of Badminton,
So that's the Prakash
Padukone Badminton Academy in Bangalore, the early morning session was at 6 o'clock.
Starting at 6.
Starting at 6, yeah.
So you would have to be there probably an hour before?
5:30,
Okay.
5:30 around then.
Yeah.
Which means I have to be up at 4 o'clock now. There you go.
There you go.
I'm
Fits
ready
in.
for it. So it just that it, and then I was there for 2 years, and then 5 days a week we're training at 6 o'clock in the morning. I was like,
That's pretty
good.
intense.
And now after that, being here, like being in Canada, since now that I've got into my job, my majority of my days are like 5:30 start or 6 o'clock start. So have the thing with habit building, it's all about awareness, having the awareness, and then creating, the right sort of process and the mechanism to create that resistance to what you don't want to do, so that you can do what needs to be done.
I love that because a personal anecdote. I used to be very comfortable waking up early, as well, until a lot of things changed when I stopped playing at a high level. One of the things that straight away went out was my sleep. So in England, during high school, my schedule used to be I used to wake up at 4:30 because I don't like rushing my morning because I had to be at the gym for 6. So I used to wake up at 4:30. Drive was around 25-minute drive to the school. I used to drive. So wake up at 4:30, freshen up, 4:35 sometimes. Freshen up, like, take a shower. Shower wakes me up in the morning. So I was like, shower, have a nice, just get ready for the day because obviously school as well. To get all the books and stuff, pack my bag, off I go. During the drive, smash a pre-workout, listen to some tunes, drive away, and then 5:45, 5:50, get to the gym, 6 or like 5 past 6, get working out, and then 6 to 7:38ish we used to work out, then have breakfast at school itself, and then from 8:30 to around 5 was high school, like school time. Now in England, a lot of these schools have extended duration because usually it's like you do 8, you'd be home by 3. A lot of times, like you would have. But in England, what happens is up until 2, 3, you have your periods or like your classes. After that, every single day, there's a 2-hour window to do something, whether that's taking extra classes, maybe that's physical activity, whether that's PE, whether that's you training for the school team, whether you play rugby, cricket, whatever. So certain times I used to, majority of the times I was playing cricket, but I also played a little bit of rugby as well. So then it would be, 3 to 5. 3 to 5 usually was always something to do with studies because it was my A levels, right? That would dictate where I'd go to university. So I used to pretty much study, and then from 5 to 7, most days we had cricket in the evening. And then once they used to finish, come back to the boarding house, 7:30-ish dinner. And then I used to get it back into my room. And if I touched the bed, I used to just, I was gone. I was out. So I made sure anything I needed to do, don't touch the bed, get it done. Because if I just sat on the bed, I was gone. I was out. So that was my routine for a good 2 years. And then when I stopped and I moved to Canada, all of a sudden I was like, "What? I don't have anything to do." And then waking up in the morning became a lot harder. So now I'm slowly trying to dial myself back into waking up early in the morning. And right now I'm still struggling a bit, but I want to get back. So ever since working out with you and training like an athlete and getting back that athletic lifestyle, it's definitely feeding a lot more. But it's so weird how a single event can just change the scope of life straight away.
Right. I think what something that I can sense with what you just said is like a lot of things that you did it right back then. But not being aware about it. If I get it right.
So I was just like, I'm doing it because I need to do it.
And also what you didn't figure out then is that's going to be the right thing of doing it. Like just having the awareness, because it had so much good structure and a flow to it that you got things right. But because you were not aware about it, it was also easy for you to switch off from it, because when you move to a new sort of a frame, right? New sort of a life schedule. I think that's going to be the key. Now it's like when you look back and say and be aware about, here's a phase where I was doing all the right things because I had a proper routine, which I sort of stuck to, and I was particular about it. And a lot of time, what happens is, life happens. We all have life. Things becomes unpredictable. That's good. That happens. But majority of the time, we do have some control within us. Like if you have to talk about your next week, 80% of the things what it's gonna look like. A lot of time, we don't plan a life around it, like how what that whole week would look like. I see, if you can structure it the way you did it, it probably 10 years back, I think you still can be more productive in a way. And I'm not saying you're not, but it's just a bit of a lesson that you can still pick so many pointers. And I always reflect back to my time in Hyderabad in 2021, where I was so particular about my whole routine because I had time in hand. Things were so much in my control.
Yep.
Absolutely couldn't blame anything around me. There's nothing in the world at that point would take me away from my schedule because I had absolutely nothing to do. Nothing. So that was a golden time for me where I had everything in my control to plan and go about my day. And I did that for nice good 2.5 months. And I was like, I knew there's so many things I can do, which I thought I couldn't. And each time now, when I see myself going a bit off track, which happens now with change in work and so many things happening every now and then, I always reflect back to those days and say, okay, this is how I went about it. So I have to get back into structuring my day, my priorities, and how I can then go about it. Yeah.
Just want to be cognizant of time. Something that's very unique about you is you were in Australia for a good 5-6 years, right? And you had the privilege of, you worked for WACA, Western Australia Cricket Association. You did Perth Glory, WACA. What was
But Wildcats.
the Wildcats, the basketball team?
Yeah.
And you were doing your masters in Australia, right?
Bachelor's in.
Your bachelor's in Australia.
Yeah.
Okay. Over there, firstly, how'd you find Australia?
Wow, it's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when that was I would say one of the best time that I had. Yeah, I loved it. It was challenging when I first moved there. Back in 2015, I went there for my studies, new culture, new language. Although it's English, but it's the Australian accent.
Hey, you going, mate?
Hey, no worries, mate. Hey, going. Yeah, no, I reckon a lot of time in initial days. I had a tough time in terms of understanding what was happening around me because I was at the university studying exercise and sports science where there's all Australians around. Workplace, WACA, other sports organization, majority are local people. So you're now trying to understand the whole culture around it, the accent, the slangs, so many things. It was a great environment, but for me, it was so uncomfortable to be there, right? Because I've moved from India, where you always have the privilege to switch between languages. It's your home, it's your comfort zone. But one thing I was very keen on and very sure about that I want to be there and I want to adapt and learn things. Spending 6 months, a year down, year and a half, I was getting comfortable, started knowing people. And they were pretty welcoming. I never felt any different to people around me. Felt like I was part of it. And I took the initiative of learning new things. And then, life just got, it got easy over a period of time. It was fun, great weather, great workplace. Had a great time at the university. It was a bit unfortunate in a way things happened post-COVID. A lot of change in terms of visa rule. But, I don't regret whatever's happened has happened. But, I enjoyed my time there.
How was your experience with Western Australia? Because Western Australia, so in Australia you have domestic cricket. So WACA is Western Australia Cricket Association. One of the staples of Shield cricket. They are so good. They have been so good. JL, Justin Langer was Western Australia. Adam Gilchrist. Who else? Mitch Marsh, Sean Marsh, all these guys. How was your experience at the WACA?
That was like a dream come true for me when I first walked in. I remember this was early 2016 when I first started there, and I walked in and I had all this big Australian players around me, and I was like, "Oh, where am I?" That's that moment where you're just trying to absorb everything. To start with, it was slightly uncomfortable because you trying to get a hang of things happening around, but I started knowing people like my mentor Warren Andrews, one other mentor Rob Chipchase, who was who guided me in my initial days. Pretty nice guys, explained me every small things, every small detail. Were very patient with me because I was they could sense that I was getting a feel of what's happening around. For me, I have to adapt and learn quickly, which I started doing from my day one, because it's it was the environment that I want to thrive, I want to grow. I knew it straight away. So while I'm studying, I've got this opportunity. I've got that, foot in the door. I want to maximize it right now. I don't want to let it go. So I did everything in my control to do things right. Um, the environment around pretty professional, great culture. People are respectful about each other. The sport, cricket, it's massive. It's a great sport. It's a very culturally old sport. With about Ashes, how
Yep.
Australia and England go, they go
Way
long
back.
back, way
Yeah,
back,
yeah,
right, in terms of cricket. So um, to be a part of it and the culture was like a great experience for
yeah.
me.
One of the things I've always loved about Australian cricket is how much success they've had, given you look at the population of Australia versus population of, let's say, India or Pakistan. It's a fraction,
Yeah.
yet they're ruthless. When you were there, did you? Firstly, I'm sure you wondered this as well. Like, how are they so good?
Yeah.
Did you see that at Waka, the foundations of why are they so ruthless and so good?
Yeah, I did. And I think at that particular point, when Justin Langer has taken over as a coach, they built a good culture around what was happening there. So for me, like a team culture where you have a mission statement, core values was something new. I haven't been exposed to such environment back then. Um, the biggest surprise that I always had is why that they have been so successful. For me to understand now, it's what's happening up here that's going to make this state association successful, and then eventually, how these players would go and perform at the national side, because the majority of the players in the span of those 4 or 5 years represented Australia. The biggest learning that I had is the foundation work there, the culture. Okay, so you all come in as players. There's set rules there. Okay, I remember back we had that culture of uh, trust, family, and humility. I don't know if it has changed now, but that's what it was. So trust is once you come as a team, whether you're a player, coach, support staff, it's trusting each other. Having that immense trust, unconditional trust, and then trusting yourself to do the right work. Okay? So I think that was a big part of when I was around. It's like people had that trust in me, although I wasn't fully qualified. I didn't have a lot of experience working in Australia back then, but that trust they had. Okay, you got this, man. You go, do this, do that. Okay, you're gonna lead this. So I think that gives you that confidence, and that's what they had. That unconditional trust, that immense trust that they have in players is you're gonna do this. Then either the family is like, we talk about teamwork. Family is a level up. You you're more involved, you emotionally involved, you feel the other person, you're looking after each other. It's not about just being there as a team for the sake of it. It's all about really looking after yourself to make sure that you get what you need. You have all the resources, all the equipments that's going to take you forward. And if there's any help you need, we're there to help you. So I think that changed everything. And then the humility, and I've only I started understanding humility to its core. It's what humility means. And I'll
What does
ask,
it mean? Yeah.
what does it mean actually? Is it, and a lot of time for humility is we say about, oh, staying grounded, not having pride and all. Um, but I feel humility is like it's something that should be a part of your life. A lot of time we show humility at different times, and sometimes we don't.
Okay.
It just like it's a quality that goes on and off, right? Sometimes in an ideal scenario you want to be humble, and then sometimes the arrogance creeps in, and you may not may unknowingly, you know you might not be humble, you might have the arrogance, you might have a bit of an attitude that put people off. Humility, I feel it's something that it should be a part of your lifestyle. It's a part of your habit of what you are as a character. And I'm still trying to reflect on myself, and it's like, am I really an humble person? And maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe I have some level of arrogance. Maybe I have some level of sort of attitude that just creeps in at different phase in life. And that's where I think when we spoke about humility back then, it came as a non-negotiable thing. It's not. It's not. It's an unconditional thing.
So
It's
how
not.
did they define? How did Western Australia define humility?
It's all about is being having pride in what you do, at the same time taking a step back and moving forward. So when you're in a sports environment, you're gonna achieve lot many big things, whether it's terms of performance, winning trophies and all. But when you do it, yes, you're gonna have enjoy the moment, have fun, but then take a step back and move forward. A lot of time, I think we get absorbed in our own self identity of what we have achieved, and we carry that as a pride, but that eventually turns into a bit of an arrogance, right? Of how we want to define ourselves, which would then let go of that humility that we seek, which is going to make us a better person. But it just happens. It's just a human emotion. But I think for me, which I understood is in terms of humility is from in a sports environment is all about moving forward from it. It's lucky you have achieved this. Is how do we move forward? Not being stuck in that in your achievement of what you had in the past. I think that was a thing. Is a lot of players who were there, who were high achievers, were simple people with whom you can have conversation. And I'll tell you, I share an example. Like I met some of these guys for the GT20 in Canada this year after 4 years.
Who all? Do you
Nick
mind?
Hobson. I met Nick Hobson. I met AJ Ty, Marcus Toynis, although I met him at Lucknow.
Yeah.
Jason Behrendorff. But those
Yeah.
are the old players who played for Australia, who were part of the WACA. And then I met them in Canada, like in Toronto last year. Absolutely nothing changed. And in 4 years, they have grown big. They have achieved such a lot of
Yeah,
things, right?
Stoinis, AJ Tai went on an absolute franchise spree.
Yeah,
Did very
yeah.
well. Stoinis, I think he's playing every single franchise league
Does.
around. World Cup winner.
Absolutely.
T20 World Cup winner.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I was like, I'm talking to them as if we have met
Yeah.
yesterday, right? So it's that humility that's always been a part of that culture. And a lot of people whom I talk to right now at the WACA, even if when I met Justin Langer, Adam Wojcik during my time in Lucknow, it feels like I've known them for years. It's been yesterday, right? Even though it was like a span of 3.5, 4 years since I last saw them, it's that humility that they carry. I think that culture around the sport was so significant that irrespective of what level of talent we had in that state, they all came together as a team. It's all that collective team effort, and that carries forward. That carries forward to the
The
national team.
purpose, they have it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And then I think one thing that sort of they have is the emotions, like the with India. We are a great nation, like from a cricketing standpoint. We love the sport. We're so passionate about it, but the emotions takes over, right? Because it stays. I think if you still ask people about 2023 World Cup, people are still hurt, and they say it like, "Oh, still hurt about the fact that we didn't get that 2023 World Cup." But if you talk to Australia about 2019 World Cup, which they lost in semi-final, they're like, "Oh, we got over it the next day," right? So it's also about switching off from what your sport is. So they had the fine balance of their professional and personal life. Is okay, once you're done with the sport, okay, let's get out and have a life around it. But sometimes I think when sport in India we get too obsessed, which has its own advantage, because that's why
When things are going well, it's beautiful.
it's beautiful, because then you're like treated like as a god, right? That's how we see it. But when things doesn't go right, it's just like you're like at the other side of the spectrum now, having all this backlash and people start hating you and whatnot. So I think for them, the advantage for Australian cricketers is that they have the fine balance, which puts them in the right frame of mind to go there out there, give their best, and and to win.
Yeah.
But if they don't, not that it doesn't affect it, it hurts. Yes, losing hurts at the end of the day, but it's that mechanism to get over it and move forward. It becomes much more easier.
Yeah, one of the biggest things I learned from like playing with Australians and Australian cricket and having Australian coaches was that fine line between being emotional and being rational. I hadn't learned that ever. No one told me that there's a difference. Now, although I'm too rational than emotional, which is
Yeah.
has its pros and cons, I would say, but understanding and driving that. So Novak Djokovic,
Yeah.
world number one, or was I think for a while.
Yeah.
Obviously he was, sorry, but now he is obviously still he's a legend. He said someone asked him, "How do you define high performance, and how can you be a high performer?" And he goes, "Well, when something happened, let's say you've had a game and let's say you've lost, you sort of sulk. You have a period of like." You want to let emotions out, etc. And he's like, you can be emotional, no problem. But then the gap between when you become emotional versus how quickly you get over it and you start your routine again, the shorter the gap, the higher the performer you will be.
So
So I was like, oh, okay. And I started doing that. And I was like, oh my God, this helps. But then you got to be aware in order to do that.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So just for time, when you were in Australia, when you moved from Australia, moved out, what did you learn from Australia? Just that whole experience that carries you forward to today, and that might have changed you.
I think, well, there's so many things. It changed me as a person because I feel when I was in India back then, I always was a guy who was a bit shy, very conservative, was underconfident. So I was at a very primitive stage of my career back then. I was trying to figure out things and all. When I moved to Australia, and I went to the university and I studied and got all this knowledge and the experience, the level that I got, I think it changed me as a person. And I was more confident back then. At the end of it, it's just like you feel you can connect well with people. I understood the strategy of communicating well in terms of on a professional level, on a personal level. I was able to work with both male and female cricketers back there, which is again gave me a different dynamic of how to sort of go about the female cricketers, which is again same game but different emotions out there, different sort of requirements out there, different demands in a way we sort of work with them. So I think that was like quite a bit of a life changing experience in its own way, being around that culture in terms of how people went about things. There's so much of ease to it in a way people spoke to each other. It's like you don't feel that pressure, you don't feel that stress. You feel you're part of environment where you have a purpose, you have a goal, and you have a real objective about how you're going to achieve those goals. So everything is well outlined. You got to do your job with integrity, with honesty, and everything else was at ease, and then keep building upon it. So also there was progression of where you want to be. There was a proper direction of how I wanted to go about me. I think I carry all that with me. When I moved back to India, I had all this whole experience with me. Yeah, moving back to India had its own
I
journey.
can imagine.
Yeah, which was for me living in Australia and adapting to that new culture, which I've been talking about for a while. Coming back to India was a bit of a reverse cultural
Shock.
shock,
Yeah.
but I now had to sort of use what I have learned at the same time adapt to a new environment. Is now I'm getting to work with athletes who come from all different part of India, some small town, some small village who had no formal schooling. Badminton was a sport that I was working with, so badminton was something that their world evolved around, and all they had to do is now play the sport. And for me, I have to understand them in a way. But at the same time, I'm using all my past experience of what I've learned, and I'm using those strategies to build my relationship now in a different way back with the new athletes that I'm training. So I carry that with me now. when moving to Canada, it's the same mechanism. Obviously, you're learning things. There's different things that you're going to learn each and every time, being in a different environment, different demographic, different sort of people. But yeah, you have that now ingrained into you with that whole experience that I had in Australia, and this carries forward. Yeah.
My last question for you that I was thinking about, and I was going to do a rapid fire, but I think you've gone through them pretty straightforward. You've already answered those.
Yeah. Okay.
The last one is, what change would you love to see in the next generation of athletes?
I think we've already seen the change. I think if we see in the past 5 years, I think the high performance side, the sports science side, has sort of taken over. The culture of strength and conditioning has got better. I think it depend upon which part of you're talking. But I'll talk. If we talk globally right now, there's a bit of a shift. I think social media has played an important role, which allows so much of resources that's available to athletes, no matter what level they play. I think it just needs to carry it upon. The only thing that needs to be understood is the authenticity of people that you follow. Especially right now with social media, there's so many gimmicks that go around, and I don't blame them. Everyone does their own thing, right? But for people who are consuming it, for athletes, who are relying on some source for them for their own development, they got to be really mindful that you go through the right resource. You're consulting the right person. Who has that formal education, the qualification, and the experience to help you out. You don't want to fall for a gimmick who might give you some random stuff to do just because he's putting some great videos around. So I think that sort of that division needs to be done properly. There's no way we can do it because there's so many things that's out of control. Social media is all about absorption. It's the attention absorption that's what's happening in today's world. But from a consumer standpoint, from an athlete standpoint, I would say is to having the right resource for yourself, which can direct you in the right direction.
Recognizing what those resources are and
Right.
being aware in terms of understanding what's legit and what's not.
Absolutely. I think that's going to be the key. But I think overall we got all the resources. I think everyone now has all the education in terms of how things needs to be done in different sport, what your game demands are, and how you're going to progress to it. But rely on a qualified person who can take you through, and not just random person who would say that he's got it.
Well, Amit, this has been absolutely fantastic. It's been such a pleasure. I think I've learned so much, not just about, your journey at the IPL in Western Australia, but also how you're so grounded and regimented to an extent. And obviously you look great. So you do work out quite a bit, we could tell. But I think there have been so many gems of wisdom that you've dropped today. And I really appreciate that. I hope all you listeners take something from this, because I've really taken a lot. Especially for me, the biggest one was the foundations of warming up, right? Mobility, stability, flexibility. That's going to be ingrained in my head. But it's been absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Now, I should take this time to thank you for really appreciate that, having me over, and having this time to share my journey with people around, and hopefully, as you said, people might take some pointers through it, and that might be a bit helpful in their journey. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Anytime, man. And who knows, we might do a part two later this year, maybe next year, or maybe we might see you in the IPL next year.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see how life unfolds. I mean, we definitely different opportunities are showing up. So well, that will lead me somewhere. But we'll definitely keep in touch, and
Awesome.
meet up again. And
100%. Sure. Awesome, mate.
Cheers
for taking the time. And well, guys, until next time.